Welcome back to the balance sheet where we cover all things in the world of women's wrestling. And this episode, we're going to deviate a little bit from our normal cadence of just recapping and talking about the current events in women's wrestling because as Mania season ended, it's a little bit of a slow lull. So, what we want to do is peel the onion back and talk about the state of the business. And what we're going to do is talk about kind of how the rosters look in both North American companies and also discuss pending free agents and kind of the landscape of wrestling or as it relates to the women is going to change very soon with what we perceive is going to be a very big free agent jump from one company to the other. But before we get there, we're going to start at the top. So last week when we recapped Mania Night 2, we were blown away by the women's triple threat match. Said it was one of the best WrestleMania matches ever. As soon as we watched it, we said this is a 5 out of 5 match. This is one of the better women's matches of all time. And
Absolutely.
not to give credence to one person's opinion, because when it comes to wrestling, there seems to only be one person's rating system that everybody goes crazy over, good or bad. And that person, the night the card happened, said this is one of the best WrestleMania matches of all time, like we said, and said that it was top to bottom, maybe the best women's match in North America that he's ever seen. And lo and behold, his rating reflected his comments. For once, he was consistent with, "Hey,
That doesn't always happen. Yeah.
this is what I saw, and this is how I rate it." So the first ever WWE women's match to get the prestigious, as they say, 5-star rating, which is Io Sky defending her title against Bianca Belair and Rhea Ripley, night 2, opening match, got the 5 stars. And we don't, this is what we always say. If you watch a match as a wrestling fan, and as soon as the match ends, you think it's a 5, then it's a 5. You don't need
Five.
to wait 1 week later for somebody's opinion to come out and say, "Oh, see, I was validated. He said it was a 5." Here is where, as sad as this is, his star rating in this specific instance is a little bit important. All of us prior to that were advocating for these three women to main event night 1. We were all advocating it. Okay. The night 1 main event got the 4.75. The fact that they came out the next day and got the 5 and by far had the best match of the weekend,
It
it gives
matters.
all it gives all of us credence that, hey, we were right as fans that this should have main evented. And the only thing I hope that happens out of this is, whether we want to believe this or not, no matter what he says in those press conferences, which are a little bit of an act, is Triple H does care about those star ratings. He does care. So when he sees, "Oh, I had a match that got this Will Osprey, Kenny Omega type of rating, but I didn't main event it. I put it on first night too." What I'm hoping for is a combination of these three women in the future could main event a pay-per-view, because now the hardcore wrestling fans have rated this as one of the best matches ever. So in a way, it's like Sasha Bailey Brooklyn, which is behind you right there. It got such a high praise that the next pay-per-view, what did he do? He main
Main event.
evented the. So all I hope is that this star rating, which again, the night I watched that match, we were all messaging, and I said, "This is one of the best matches I've ever seen, and this
Yep.
is the best women's Mania match I've ever seen." And these three women gave you the modern day wrestling classic. I didn't need that as validation. I had it, but if it's gonna help the women main event, then I'm all for it. So, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, we try not to over validate it, like you said, but it is the most known rating system in wrestling. Um, I thought the 4.75 for the men's triple threat was actually inflated. I don't have it rated that high. It was a good match, but 4.75 is an incredible match, and it was probably just short of that for me. Too much Paul Heyman for me to make it a 4.75. Funny enough, the match that was always going to main event never had a shot at not main eventing because of who was involved. Got like a 1-5, some awful, terrible score, Cena and Rhodes, and it deserved it. It was an awful match. The more I've thought about it, and we don't get too deep into men's wrestling here, but the way Cody almost murdered his friend Kevin Owens, 2 months ago, brutal match, but he wasn't willing to hit John Cena with a belt. It's just the dumbest storytelling I've ever seen, maybe in wrestling. Too much of a good guy. But that being said, the women, I actually, this might be a little bit of an Easter egg. We're still working on this, but I'm trying to start to think if I had to rate matches and be held accountable for what I rate a match. And what I mean by held accountable is I don't just want to throw out a number. I want to be able to say, well, I rated it this because of XYZ. If I look at what I would rate this match, and you're the first one who brought it up a couple weeks back, like compare it to Brooklyn, and not in like a negative way, but just say, okay, if Brooklyn's my favorite match and it was this, um, based on the stage, the degree of difficulty, this 5 star is the floor, right? You can make an argument if you're willing to do so that this had some extra juice that's worthy of being higher than a 5 star. Because I look at, I watched a couple matches this week that are some of my favorites. I rewatched Sasha Banks versus Becky Hell in a Cell, and
Great
honestly,
match. Great
that's
match.
like a 5 star match. I mean, it really is. And the only argument you might say that it's not a 5 star match is there wasn't a title change. I think Sasha winning in that moment, if you're just looking at the match, was the better outcome. We've talked about, I get why, she was moving to SmackDown. I get why she lost. But in that match, the story told, it's a little bit better match if she would have won. So I look at that match and I compare it to the Mania Triple Threat. And we didn't have a title change, but with the triple threat being part of it, it almost felt like anyone could win. So it almost felt like a title change, if that makes sense. So I actually I stand steadfast on like that Becky Sasha match being a 5. The Becky or the Sasha Banks Bailey match is tougher because there's no crowd. The Hell in the Cell one. Um, I also think that's a 5. So looking at all that stuff, to me, this Mania match is like a 5-2-5. I don't really care what he says, like I'm giving it an extra, something. The stage, kicking off Mania, being slighted for not being in the main event. And what I really, really love about it is it's very clear the 3 women went out there and basically just said, bet. And like literally almost called their shot. There
Yeah.
was a posture from the moment the match started that was like, hey, you know what? We're gonna sprint as soon as this match starts, and we're either gonna make it or we're not. And they made it, and I think it's the second best women's match of all time. I'm pretty comfortable saying that. North American
Yeah.
women's match of all time. I'm pretty comfortable saying that. I've rewatched it, and um, gives me a lot of pride as a women's wrestling fan that they went out there and they stole the show. And a little bit of that going around in the locker room. Um, Not to deviate away from the subject, but I think the other best match of the whole kind of week and a half, um, similar chip on their shoulder, the men just had that TLC tag match on SmackDown that
Awesome.
I wouldn't be shocked if that got a 5. And it was that similar, uh, maybe it's that couple power, Bianca and Montez just kind of said, hey, you know what? Disrespect, cool. Let me show you. But the women doing it to kick off night 2 was special. It will always be special. And I mean, that's probably one of the most rewatchable matches ever too. It's 14 minutes and I mean, there's not one period of time you'd look at your phone or look away from the screen.
No, you're right. I threw a party here last night, and in my outside there's a TV, and I actually, while I was bartending, I had that WrestleMania on. Like I just put WrestleMania on because after the basketball game was over, I'm 2 hours behind Eastern time. So like the games are done at 9 o'clock, and I'm like, okay, well now I got to be here till 2 a.m. What am I going to put on the TV? And I just said, oh, okay, I'm going to throw WrestleMania on, and I found myself just rewinding that match and having it behind me so I can see clips of it while I was doing my thing. But back to what you said about Sasha and Becky and Hell in a Cell. I think that match could have gotten 5 stars if the story leading up to it was Sasha beat her at Clash of Champions. Because going into Clash of Champions, the story was Becky Lynch has never beaten Sasha Banks in a one-on-one match, right? Because Becky never
Right.
beat her. If Sasha had won that title, which also would have tied into the story if she could never defend the title, because that was the ending story with her and Bailey a year later. So she wins the match in Charlotte, and they had a hell of a wrestling match in Charlotte until that double DQ countout thing that they did.
Yeah, that was a great match.
It was. And then if you go to Hell in a Cell and they have the exact match they have with Sasha going in as the champion and Becky finally overcoming a bugaboo of hers in beating Sasha Banks, I think you would give it a 5. I think what hurt Sasha Banks and Becky Lynch has nothing to do with them. It's that card was one of the worst WWE cards of all time. Go
It
back and
was.
watch that match and then watch the rest of the card and tell me what you get. Because that also had one of the worst main events of all time, which was Seth against Bray Wyatt in the
Yeah,
red match.
it's steal the show, but the safe door was left open, so pretty easy to steal on that
Exactly.
particular card.
So I agree with you. As a wrestled match, Sasha Becky was really, really good. I gotta say, even thinking about all of the Japanese women's matches I've ever watched in my life, and I've watched a lot. I I have the match behind you and the women's triple threat as they are going to be the two my two favorite matches of all time, and they're going to be my two most watched matches of all time when it comes to the women, because a lot of the Joshi wrestling from the 90s, those are like 35, 40 minutes. Like it takes them a while to get going. And the reason they were so great back then is there was no, like, you didn't think about the clock in your head. You didn't think about, oh, what's the pacing. You just watched these two women beat the crap out of each other at a time when Kevin Nash was wrestling Mabel. It's just like, okay,
Right.
whoa, this looks like the most revolutionary thing ever. Back to this triple threat match. I think all three women had a point to prove. They felt like they were hot enough as an angle to get the main event, which their boss said if they're hot enough, they'll get the main event. And they were. And yeah, obviously they don't have the quote unquote star power of Reigns, Rollins, and Punk. But here's the truth: go back and watch both matches. The crowd was way more invested in Io, Rhea, Bianca the whole way until Paul Heyman participated in that main event. The crowd was kind of like this, but that's why I would agree with you. I could not give it a 4.75. I had that match maybe around 4.25 because to me, it's a typical Roman Reigns production, which is
Yeah.
you're going to get all the near kickouts, you're going to get somebody on the floor while the other two wrestle, and then you're going to get the cinematic ending. And the
Yeah.
the reason I can't give this much more than a 4.25 is I thought that the three men wrestled very well and crisp, but I kind of knew that this whole thing was going to be Paul Heyman goes with Seth Rollins. Like that's going to be the ending. And the fact that I nailed the ending a month before it happened, it kind of takes a little bit away from me because I appreciated that for once in a Roman Reigns match, they didn't have 500 guys interfere. But like, I've seen Roman Reigns kick out of like 17 F5s. So he can't kick out of one curb stomp and a low blow. And like
Right.
some of that stuff, to nitpick. But no, I thought the women's match was just a better wrestled match. Like,
It,
I don't think it was as close as 5 versus 4.75. Like, to me, um, I agree with you. I think the triple threat ladder match on SmackDown was better than the triple threat night one main event. I thought it was a better wrestling match.
yeah. I definitely think it was. The women, what they accomplished, so a crutch that's often used in triple threat matches is you can spam finishers or just have finishers that don't get kicked out of, they get broken up, right? And the traditional way this happens, men's and women's wrestling, is you get these one-on-ones happening because someone got like beat up outside. You hit the finisher, and it's that last second dive to break up the pin. And they leaned on that a lot in the Roman Seth Punk match. The women did it in a much more realistic, much less, um, much less like drawn out drama and more like a fight. And what I mean by that is the three women were pretty hooked together almost the whole 14 minutes.
Hmm. Hmm.
We didn't
Yeah.
lose track of a single competitor for 2 or 3. There was maybe a moment where Bianca and Rhea were in there for a minute or two by themselves, but it wasn't so long that you forgot Io was in the match. And I really enjoyed how it's like watching a boxing match where everyone stays in the pocket and and no one steps back and they're fighting and throwing punches and blocking punches and ducking punches right in the pocket. And I think it really added to the match instead of making it feel like this like acted out production, which is kind of what the Roman Reigns matches have started to feel like. It just felt like a fight, and there was this desperation that was underlying throughout the match because all three women were desperately trying to get like a knockout blow, um, while fighting off, the other person, the third person. So and then the finish matched that, right? Um, the timing for Io to land, I wouldn't watch back. She landed on Rhea at 2.5. I mean, so she had to sit up on the top rope and time. How long does it take me to jump, flip, and land? And could have easily timed that where she landed at 1.5 or 2, but she actually landed after the 2 hit, and it just made it so visually appealing. She hits, Rhea keels over to the side, and then she pins Bianca, which is great because the kiss of death is KOD's the most protected finisher in wrestling, and they made it very clear that Rhea was not kicking out.
Or Io, because when she
Right?
gave it to Io, Rhea had to shoulder tackle Bianca and knock her off. But
Yeah.
when Rhea hit Riptide on Bianca, Bianca kicked out of it.
Yep.
She just straight kicked out of it. And that's the thing about that match that is incredible is all three women, like you said, were connected together. I feel like Bianca and Rhea went out there with a purpose to not only make sure because they knew obviously Io was going over, but to make sure she went over in the best possible manner. Because the one thing I know about those three women, they are interconnected. They all work NXT together. They all have been on War Games teams, War Games matches with each other. I mean, Bianca and Io were supposed to be a super tag team in NXT, and then they just dropped it. Like they
Right.
just dropped it once COVID hit. So these three women have a connection, and I know one of your favorite pieces of fan video was Sasha Banks, Bianca Belair, WrestleMania 37, where Sasha is on the outside of the ring watching Bianca get the celebration, and she was so happy that she got to participate with Bianca in the moment, and she was just like almost like
You see the
"Ah,
joy coming out of
the
her. Yeah.
joy, right?" There's a video that I don't know how this fan ended up getting it backstage, to be honest, where Rio was hugging a fan and Bianca runs in and they hug as if to say, "Yeah, we did it." And then they realize the camera was off and they say, "Okay, we got to get out of here because we don't want
Yeah.
people to know this." But those three women are very close as it relates to just their trajectory in WWE. And I think all three of them went out there like, okay, no matter who goes over, we're not gonna sulk about it. We're gonna make sure that the person who goes over looks amazing, but we also are gonna come out looking great. And I think that it's the right decision because we'll get to kind of the dream match that happened the next day on Raw, but storyline, Bianca is out for a while.
Well, she did break some fingers.
She
That's
did break some fingers.
that's
That's a
legit. Yeah,
legitimate. And so the smart thing that they're doing is they're just letting her sit because absence does make the heart grow fonder. And I
a
do
hundred
think
percent.
that even people booing Bianca Belair, it just never felt real. Like it was like, why are we booing her? Like, what
Yeah,
is it? What is it about her we don't like? Because even in the match, people are booing her a little bit, and then she does one of her great spots, and everybody starts cheering her again. It's like, oh, what now? And so it's good that they kept Bianca off TV. I feel like Bianca is going to come back with this Naomi Jade story at some point, as she alluded to. And so let's talk about Raw the night after. I know we touched on it briefly last week. So Io comes out to the ring and talks about this is the greatest night of her life. And then Stephanie Vaquer's music hits. And if there was a camera on me when I was watching this, it would have been viral because I lost my mind. I was like, oh my God, there's no way they're going to do this on Raw. So I'm thinking, oh, they're setting it up for Evolution or something. But they did it. They gave away one of the internet dream matches just like that. But I'm glad
yeah,
they did it because Stephanie and Io were really cooking. But because you got the weird finish with Roxanne and Julia and then Rhea coming out, you kind of saw the future of the WWE Women's Division in that one segment, right? Like,
yeah.
what was what did you talk about the match, but also how Rhea came out, gave the belt to Io as like a show of respect, and almost said, I'm not ready yet to go back and fight you. So what I hope is they do something else with Rhea for a while, like keep her away from the belt, because I think Rhea and Bianca have established themselves and they don't need the titles. They are big enough stars and they can elevate other women with their star power right now. And I think Io having the belt, he can also elevate other women because you're going to get the best match if it's Io. And so I think Io should have title defenses against lesser known up and coming women. Roxanne is well known to the NXT crowd, but like if Roxanne had a great feud with Io but lost, I don't think anybody's going to knock that. I just
No,
don't like Roxanne's booking, and it's evident that Roxanne has won 3 matches on TV this year. So, why don't you unpack all of that? You have Io Stephanie, then you had Stephanie Roxanne, and that whole segment with those women. What did you think?
no. Your point about Io. Io is the perfect champion to have um a couple low key feuds, and what I mean by that is she's so good in the ring that you could show off the rest of the roster and ensure that you get a good quality match out of it. No, I'm not saying I don't want her to have these big title defenses. I totally do, but she is the exact right champion for open challenges and little 2 week, 3 week feuds, um, to kind of put a spotlight on some of the other women. I do think, and the internet is the sleuthing in the wrestling community is top notch, and I don't know if you've seen it, but Roxanne and Julia were both wearing the patches that they're starting to do uh,
Yeah.
for memorabilia that said basically like Raw debut, I think. And that usually it clearly wasn't Roxanne's Raw debut, but so that would mean that it's her Raw debut as an official like long term member of Raw. So um, Julia had one on too.
Yep.
So presumably they're coming to the main roster. I'd say Roxanne now and Julia sooner rather than later. Um, the women's division, and we're going to talk about this later, is so competitive and stacked. Um, we have reached a boom period in this business where a mixture of three things are hitting at once. Okay. So you've got all of the women who put in the work and were part of the revolution and evolution are still around. And it's become acceptable for women to be main card wrestlers into their 30s. That's become normal. Um, Most of your favorite women in wrestling are much older than Trish Stratus was when she retired officially. And that's great. Men wrestle into their 40s and 50s almost as a rule. So that's one barrier that got broken down. So that's your Naomi's, your Asukas, your four horsewomen. They are still around. So that's piece one. Piece two is you've got women who were inspired by this match coming into play and making their way up, and they were little girls when that match happened, and they're now here as part of the wrestling scene. That's your Roxanne's, your Billy Starks, your Cora Jade, that generation. And then the third piece is you have the PC generation, all of the hits that they've kind of created through that coming into play. That's your Biancas and a lot of the women coming up through NXT. So we're stacked. And again, we'll unpack it in a little bit. But what WWE did on Monday on Raw was say, this is my new top of the card. And it doesn't mean that anyone in and out of those groups can't be around and involved and have title feuds, but their top of the card is Rhea, Io, Stephanie for sure. You got Julia and Roxanne in there. And then obviously on the SmackDown side, you have, your Bianca, Liv, and but it very much felt a little bit like the four horsewomen coming out against, the Bellas and everyone, and kind of said, hey, this is the focal point. I felt like those women, it was a big segment to stamp that they're the focal point right now. No other reason to give away the Io Stephanie match, to be honest with you. I think the point was, oh crap, like they wanted a shock value of, hey, pay attention to this. This is your new top of the card. And real quick, the match, great match. They obviously
Uh-huh.
have tons of chemistry. And the crowd was hot for it. And those are two of the most over women in wrestling. So, I mean, you put that on at a PLE and it will steal the show. It'll be the best match on the card.
It is funny, right? Io has wrestled 8 years in the United States, and she's wrestled 9 years in Japan. So next year, Io will have wrestled as much in WWE as she has anywhere else. But the reason I'm bringing this up with Stephanie, Julia, Io, Rhea, is when Stephanie got hired. Obviously, she had already one of her dream matches with Mercedes. Famously, they had it twice. She said the one match she wanted was Io, and they pretty much gave it to her.
Yep.
Julia said her dream match is Rhea Ripley, and they teased that match.
Yep.
So it's almost like their their way to attract some of these free agent women is they're like, well, who do you want to wrestle? And I'm sure Stephanie and I'm sure Julia said I want to wrestle, and they're like, okay, well, we'll make it happen for you. And to Julia, she said she just wants to do the whole face off with Rhea Ripley and see where that match is. She's just admired her from such afar. So it's like WWE has the capabilities now to just give you these dream matches. And to your point, I think that was a little bit of a Triple H flex. Like, okay, you thought Mania sucked. A lot of why Mania sucked is because somebody was supposed to be part of the show and he kind of didn't show up and it kind of screwed us up. But if I'm left to my own devices without involvement, I can give you this great Raw. And the Raw was like significantly better than Mania, except for the women's triple threat match,
Yeah.
which kind of saved, in my opinion, the show. Like, I don't think the show is great, but it's like WrestleMania 3. I'll always remember it for Savage Steamboat. So for me, I'll always remember this WrestleMania for this women's triple threat match. But to your point about the top of the card, and we can talk about this right now. So two very hot button wrestling items that I don't think have been discussed enough, and we're going to do it here. So Stephanie Vaquer, who we're talking about in these matches, whether it's with Roxanne or with Io or Julia, Stephanie is as hot a woman's wrestler there is. I mean, she's just on fire. You look at her social media, you look at the comments about her, like people just like her. She had an interview with, I believe it was like a Chilean radio station, and she detailed, and I did translate it out of Spanish, that she got offered way more money in AEW. The night the WWE contact, or she was with WWE in Toronto, AEW's like, hey, we'll send a plane for you. We want to make you this offer. He called WWE and said, this is what AEW is paying me. And they said, well, have fun in AEW. We're not going to match that. Thank you. She went back to her hotel room. She cried, talked to her dad. Dad said, why are you going to let money get in the way of your dreams? She still was confused. Then the next day, Shawn Michaels called her. And obviously, whatever he said worked. Because from that point on, she didn't think about AEW. She went to WWE, she went to NXT, she took less money, she did all these things. And from an exposure standpoint, I can't say she made the wrong decision. I think she made the right decision because they are clearly pushing her as the new Hispanic face of the company. Whether Penta comes in, Phoenix comes in, it doesn't matter. Stephanie, I have never seen them push a Latina star the way they're pushing her. And I've watched WWE a long time. Like Bailey is Latina, and they don't even acknowledge it most of the time on TV. But with Stephanie, they're not only pushing her in front, she is front and center of all of these promotions. So from an exposure standpoint, I think she made the right decision. Nobody can deny that. But what she did do, which we should talk about here, is that by her turning down significantly less money for the WWE dream, I hate to say this, and Stephanie, if you're watching this, please don't hold this against me. I'm still your biggest fan, but now WWE has ammunition to lowball all other women free agents. Because what they can say is, look what we did with Stephanie Vicker. She took less money. Look what we've done with her. Look at her. Look at the star power.
Yeah.
So now they can undercut all the other women free agents. Mariah May is coming up because they can say, well, okay, we're going to give you less money, but you're going to make it back on the back end because look what we're doing with Stephanie. I don't
And they
think
can't,
that's,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
And and the thing is, they can't do that with everyone, but they have a blueprint, so to speak, to say, look at this. And if you knew you were going to take less money but be treated and pushed the way Stephanie has the last 6 months, you are more open to doing it. The business background on this, just want you to think about a couple things. There's no union in wrestling, so they don't have a union telling them what contracts they should and should not take. Even worse than that, we talk about unions all the time in wrestling, or it comes up all the time. Most wrestlers don't have legitimate negotiating agents. They might have an agency and someone that helps them with legal and paperwork, but they don't have an agent that's going out saying, you're not going to treat my person like this. You're not going to lowball my person. They don't have an advocate. In fact, WWE, WCW, AEW, they're more likely to tell young wrestlers, no, you don't need all that. You're part of the family and we'll take care of you. And, you'll save money by not having all of that. Right. So they're not always represented very well in that regard. And as you tell the Stephanie story, she's talking to her dad about it, talking to Shawn Michaels about it. There's not an agent in there saying, no, you can't do that. I know some of the bigger stars absolutely have an agency that will fight for them. Mercedes does, Becky does, Roman Reigns does. I'm saying, most of these NXT wrestlers are not spending money on an agent that's they don't have the money for an agent that can
Mhm.
get them more money. It's like it's a chicken and the egg thing, right? What I wish for in women's wrestling, we're not tribal here. I don't actually care paid right if they land in AEW or WWE from a brand standpoint. I want the women to get paid what they're worth. I want them to get the screen time that they deserve. What I will say is Mariah May, my hope is that she gets one counter offer. And what I mean by that is I want her to get deep enough into free agency that she gets a WWE offer, she gets an AEW offer, and then when she decides where she wants to go, I hope that she creates one counter offer at least that raises the bar for women's wrestling. And to your point, Stephanie didn't play any hardball. She just took the dream. And she was in a position where, WWE said, okay, have fun in AEW. If she had an agent and she said to the agent, hey, I really want to go to WWE, the agent probably would have called back and said, this is the AEW offer. How much closer can you get? And at least gotten a counter offer and played a little bit of hardball. Um, it's important because it helps the water level rise for all the other women, and it should become the norm. We've talked about it recently.
Uh,
Re-signing your contract while you're still under contract it is not good for the growth of wages in the sport. I'll kick it to you real quick, but just like the one point I want to make: when someone overperforms their contract, if y'all have ever heard the term "rip up the contract and start a new one," people generally get raises based on what they're currently getting paid. So not only did Stephanie take less money now, she might have hurt her next contract because the bar is lower than what she could have gotten. So they might give her a 20% raise on her next contract or whatever. You have to overperform your deal in a way that you get so much leverage. Say Becky Lynch 2018, where it's like, okay, we're going to rip up this contract. We're not starting from here. We're putting you where you belong. It's very hard to do that. So your what you accept now also impacts what you might have to accept in the future.
I think Stephanie, this is what's going to happen with her specifically. She's going to end up making a lot of money in her next contract. But even that amount of money, it's probably lower than what she could have made if she let, like you said, the free agency process take its shape. Because WWE has invested so much resources in Stephanie Vaquer, they're never going to let her leave.
Yeah.
They're never going to let her leave now. So they'll pay her a lot of money. She'll be fine. But where, like you bring up a point about, like Rhea Ripley recently signed a mega deal. Hypothetically, if Rhea Ripley said to WWE, "Look, I'm 99% gonna re-sign with you guys, but I gotta at least see what the other side is offering." Is WWE gonna be like, "Oh, we're insulted, Rhea, goodbye"? Are they gonna let Rhea Ripley just walk away?
No.
No, they're going to probably, even before AEW got there, if she had just said those words, they'd be like, "Oh, okay, all right, I get your message, Rhea. Cool. Here's 25% more than what we were going to offer you. Here, what do you think now?" Like whatever it was, they would have upped it because they're not going to let her go. But it is good to see. AEW is great for wrestling, the business, because it gives you options.
Yep.
Remember, when the WWE didn't have real competition, remember they used to always have that Black Monday where 50 wrestlers got released and people, now it's like there's options. The wrestling business is thriving, and Stephanie had more leverage than she realized. So
Yep.
Stephanie was CMLL's biggest woman star. Okay. CMLL for 45 consecutive weeks has sold out 8,000 seats every week, every Friday. other than WWE, from a live attendance business, CML is the biggest wrestling company in the world because AEW does not do 8,000 every week. That being said, knowing now that WWE wanted to buy AAA, these conversations don't happen in 20 minutes. Hey, I want to buy AAA, it's done. So Stephanie knew at some point through the grapevine that, hey, WWE is looking to get into this Mexican market. That alone makes her way more of a commodity because she was the biggest women's wrestling star in Mexico. And if WWE wants to get into that market, then they need her to elevate it and to take her from CMLL. So to me, yeah, like I wish I wish she went back to WWE and say, hey, I need you to come closer to AEW. But what it felt like to me is between her dad and Shawn Michaels, she got the this is what you always wanted to do. How could you not do it? And she
Yeah.
caved.
The conversation about AEW, again, if you're a WWE fan that listens and you still don't like that AEW exists, let me appeal to your better senses once again. When free agency, a new contract was coming up pre AEW, WWE had all the leverage. What are you going to do if you leave here? And if you tried to play hardball, they could do one of two things. They could take you off TV, or they could keep you on TV and bury you, right? That doesn't work anymore. Neither thing works anymore. And the more women that have the leverage that realize this, the quicker we're going to get those um, wages going up. And it works on the other side too. Mariah May is very smart. She realizes this. She's presumably not signing with anyone until she's a free agent and can talk to both. And Tony's taken her off TV, and that's fine. That's not going to hurt her. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Every time Mercedes has left, she's come back. There's been a huge response to her coming back. Alexa Bliss got a huge pop at the Royal Rumble. Charlotte, Bailey. People, it's the old days of losing your spot, I think, are behind us. There's enough options out there where you can go away, and it actually can be good and refreshing for your character. The scarier one is getting buried. We have the most proof you'll ever need that with AEW existing, that no longer matters. I don't know that WWE has ever buried a wrestler further and worse than Dean Ambrose on his way out the door. They put this man in the goofiest angles with the dumbest writing, had him lose to a bunch of people. He was an unwatchable character on TV. It was stupid for the sake of stupid. They also did the same thing to the Revival. And it's not just that they've been successful in AEW. They arrived in AEW with such fanfare. They got big contracts, and their booking and their character fulfillment, I would say, in AEW for them have been fantastic. So, if anything, I think fans are smart enough now that burying someone on TV only makes the next company love them more when they get them, right? Like if Tony were to bury Mariah May for the next 6 months, I only think that WWE fans would be even more like, ha, we got one at her arrival. That's that tribalism, and that's not the part that I think is healthy. What I'm saying, though, is that the business has grown to the place that wrestlers have more leverage than most of them know. And kudos to Mariah for seemingly knowing that she has leverage and not, she shouldn't resign in AEW without seeing what WWE has to offer. And I actually think she should resign with AEW for other reasons, but only if she gets the right contract from them.
Yeah. It, as it relates to Mariah May, the tea leaves seem to be that it doesn't really matter what AEW is going to throw at her, she's leaving.
Yeah.
And the only reason I say that is because if there was any indication that she is going to come back to AEW, I feel like we would have got hints by now. But it just feels like they rushed to end the feud with Tony because the reports are she said, I'm not resigning no matter what. So do with it what you will. And I hope for her sake that she hasn't lowballed herself there, where WWE's like, oh, okay, well, she's coming to us no matter what. But there is an actual real example of what we're talking about working to the benefit. EO. So 2021, EO's contract was pretty much done. It was over. She had an NXT contract. She told so at the time, I think Vince was still in charge and Triple H was NXT. And I guess she loves Triple H and loves how he booked her. Was not excited about going to the main roster because of Vince's track record. So she said, hey, I'm going to let my contract run out and I'm going back to Stardom. I got a big money deal from Stardom. They're going to pay me what I'm making in NXT and a little bit more. And it's not main roster money, but I don't care about main roster money if I'm not going to be in prominent things. Okay, so Vince goes away, Triple H takes over, comes to you and says, oh, I'm in charge now. So Io signs, got the more money, and look at what it's done for her. But even threatening to go back to Stardom kind of forced Triple H to probably move on her sooner. Brought her
Yeah.
back as part of a faction, and then not only brought her back as part of a faction, but in a lot of ways, she was the centerpiece of Damage Control, and with her and Bailey, and the story was them ending up at Mania. So
I almost, real quick though, that's almost Bailey's creative though, right? If you
it
listen to
is
the
Bailey's. It
interviews.
is it is Bailey's creative. Yeah, it is.
But they trusted Triple H to follow through on it at least.
But Io has always said that Triple H is her favorite wrestling boss she's ever had. So and if I'm Io, I can't disagree with her. What has Triple H ever done not for Io? I mean, he has booked Io brilliantly. Like he has
Yeah.
never really misstepped with her. Mariah May, I feel bad for Tony in this one sense that he brought her in to the company and she had one angle for her whole AEW career. It was the biggest angle they ever had for the women. And if she leaves now, he pretty much gave her the most TV time, the most spotlight, and she's going to use that to go to the other company. But I don't know if he could have done anything different because I think that angle helped propel the women's division in AEW, and Mariah May was a big part of it. So,
Yeah.
but sometimes with this dream stuff, like, look, there's a generation of women's wrestlers who grew up with nothing but WWE.
Right.
And Stephanie and Mariah May are in the same boat where they don't know a world of an AEW. They just know a world of WWE. So to them, that's the end all be all. And look, if I'm Mariah May and I didn't get to main event a Dynasty pay per view or what the pay per view that her and Tony
Yeah.
had the was that pay per view called?
I think it was Dynasty.
It was
Or no.
Dynasty. No, Dynasty just happened, right? With
Yeah.
Mercedes and Julia Hart. So
Revolution. Sorry.
and then I see what Io, Bianca, and Rhea do on Mania Night 2 in front of that crowd. If I'm Mariah May, I'm like, ooh, you know what? That could be me. And that's the intoxicating part of WWE. But yeah, like let's see. Let's see what happens. But I
Yeah.
hope Mariah lets both sides give her the best offer.
Yeah, I hope so too. And all Tony needs to do, because you're right, he's done everything he can do. All Tony needs to do is be respectful of her while she's remains under contract, right? He's not gonna, she wants to be on TV, put her in a, feud with someone. She'll probably lose, but just don't make her look bad. And then give her the best offer he can give her, and then he's done everything that he can. But I will say, if he loses Mariah May, you have a looming market correction that will benefit AEW if Mariah May goes to WWE. And it will just take a couple of the women being, bold enough on the WWE side to take advantage of their leverage the way that Mariah did. And just want to unpack it real quick for everyone. The market correction is there are only so many titles and spots. WWE runs 5 to 6 PLE matches, a PLE. Um, Currently, with who's currently signed, okay, WWE has no less than 16 women that, based on what we know of them, what their resume is, where they're at in their career, would presume to be in the title mix every so often over the next couple of years, right? You can't have everyone in at the same time, but they're all kind of waiting their turn in the rotation. And you know who's at the top and is always going to be in the
Mhm.
mix. But you've been saying for a while the remaining horsewomen in WWE keep on going a tick lower on those lists. Let me read something to you. AEW or WWE, Rhea Ripley, Bianca Belair, Io Sky, Flair, Tiffany Stratton, Stephanie Vaquer, Julia, Naomi, Bailey, Jade Cargill, Jordan Grace, Liv Morgan, Becky Lynch. If I stop there, that's 13. You also have Nia Jax, Asuka. Did I say Jordan Grace? Yeah. Kyrie Saints. You've got 16, 17. I don't know where
Did you say
Kyrie's at.
Bailey? Did you say
Bailey.
Bailey?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know where Kyrie's at in her career. Maybe she's not on the list. Nia Jax probably could be happy going for like the Intercontinental or the US title. But most of those women, and that's without Mariah May, would want to be wrestling on WrestleMania. We saw what just happened to Bailey. She didn't even make the card. Of all those women I named, Julia, Stephanie, Roxanne. I don't think I named Roxanne actually. Roxanne,
No.
not on the WrestleMania card. Jordan Grace not on the WrestleMania card, Liv Morgan in a tag match, Becky in a tag match. I'm saying it's very, very stacked at the top. Let's add Mariah May to that. On the AEW side, you have Mercedes Moné, Tony Storm, Chris Statlander, Willow Nightingale, Megan Bayne, Jamie Hayter, Athena. That's 7 that you're sure about. Thunder Rosa's in there. She'd probably be just as happy in the TBS. And then I've got Britt Baker. She's technically in AEW. Does she end up in WWE? I don't know. Um, Soraya Page is out there too. She's not coming back to AEW. Does she end up in WWE? I didn't name Alexa Bliss, and I didn't name any of the other NXT women. The point I'm making is market correction. You only have 7 spots in AEW that are filled with women who would expect to be in stories and having pay-per-view matches if they lose Mariah May. And on WWE side, you have 17 to 20 women who are going to be in that mix. At some point, there will be a woman or 2 or 3 that has already lived what you call their WWE dream. They're there now. Like Mercedes, they've done it, they've tasted it, they've been on a PLE, and maybe they go, you know what? I I don't want to fight for my spot, you know, with inconsistent booking. It's not about fighting for your spot. They all believe in themselves and will fight for the spot, but the booking gets very inconsistent. And you have things like what just happened to Bailey happen. You know, at some point, a woman or 2 or 3 or 4 is going to shake loose from that tree and go over to AEW to be creatively satisfied and get to wrestle in meaningful matches more often. I
So
didn't
I had
even
a
name the
tweet.
mid card on WWE, by the way.
So I had a tweet a couple of days ago, and I said on this episode I'm going to talk about specific women who should go to WWE and say, "Look, I know I just signed a contract. I know I have years left on my deal, but I want to release. We know you're bringing in Mariah May. We know you already have a glut of talent in NXT that you're going to call up. I don't think I'm in your long-term plans, and if that's the case, I'm cool with it. I want to walk away. I'll sign an NDA that says I won't bash WWE or anything. I just want to go and wrestle somewhere else." In my opinion, Charlotte Flair and Bailey should go to WWE management and ask for their release and want to go to AEW, because I don't know what the future holds for these two. I would put Becky in that category, but because of Becky's husband, I can't, because her husband is clear cut one of the top stars and she is treated as a top star for now. But let's look at the Charlotte timeline here. She was gone for a year plus from a devastating injury. She was finally in her career, up to that injury, becoming the baby face that you wanted her to be. She was
Yep.
doing the mentor role with Shotzi. She was losing matches, but she was like, don't worry, Shotzi, we'll get there. And they had something going with them. She gets injured right as fans were starting to embrace her. So instead of her coming back as a super baby face, they bring her back as Charlotte Flair, the Ice Queen.
With vignettes that just totally poison the water, by the way.
She comes back. She wins one of the worst women's Royal Rumbles of all time. She gets in a feud with the it woman of SmackDown, at least, which is Tiffany. It goes off the rails because she is told, "Hey, give Tiffany her up or her comeuppance to see if she can hang." She does that. Tiffany says, "Okay, watch this." Completely, in my opinion, took it to a level that we don't want to see wrestlers do to each other. I don't want to hear about your divorces and stuff. Like, I thought Tiffany won the promo battle that night in Chicago, but she hit her way below the belt.
Yep.
Normally, if this was the 5 years ago Charlotte Flair and you did that to Charlotte Flair, you're not only losing your WrestleMania match, you're going to get almost shovel buried, where they're going to just let Charlotte beat you up and win. Not only did that not happen, Charlotte lost clean as a sheet to a
Yep.
moonsault. Because, in my opinion, this is Triple H saying, Charlotte, at this stage of your career, your job is to put these women over. That's all great if creatively there's a fulfilling story behind it. But here's why I know they don't have long-term plans for Charlotte. She loses to Tiffany, and she's off TV now. She's not even on TV. Nia Jax is Tiffany's next feud.
Right.
So if I were Charlotte and I were Bailey, I would walk to WWE's offices and say, look, can we just get a release? Because at this point, where do those two women rank in the pecking order? Like, where are they? Okay, would you agree with this top five? Rhea, Bianca, Io, Stephanie, Tiffany.
Yep. That's probably the top five.
Okay. All right. So those are the five. The next five. Becky is back, so she's going to be in the mix. Naomi seems to be somebody that creatively they're pushing. Jade.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm missing two more people here.
Liv Morgan for sure.
Live.
Probably
Oh,
higher
sorry,
up than
sorry, sorry,
nine.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Live is probably six, or maybe Live. Honestly, I could make a case. Live might even be in the five, so maybe it's Live. Charlotte and Bailey, if I were to slot this, are going to be anywhere from 11 to 15. And
Yeah.
to me, if you're Charlotte Flair and you have literally accomplished everything in WWE, you have main evented WrestleMania, you have main evented multiple pay-per-views, you have won every single title that the company has, you have gotten pushed to the limits and to the highest to highs, and yet still you have never been as over as your contemporaries. It feels like to me a fresh start for her in a fresh company with a different character and a different purpose is needed. And I think her and Bailey are in the same boat, and I think both of them should want to go to AEW because here's the thing. If you go back and study professional wrestling and when WCW became hot, yes, everybody talks about Hogan and Savage and Hall and Nash and all that stuff. But I still think we have never gotten a proper Mercedes Ashley Flair rivalry told with the story, with the backdrop. Like, yeah, we got a lot of TV time for them in 2016, but think about it. They have not had a feud since 2016. Those two. It's 9 years. Think of how hot a Ashley Flair Mercedes feud could be in AEW.
Their last title match against each other, Barack Obama was still president. If that doesn't lay it in for, they've had little things here and there, but their last one-on-one title match, one-on-one, because technically they were in the WrestleMania 33 four-way together, but their last
Yeah.
one-on-one title match, um,
Roadblock.
road. I was gonna say Falls Count Anywhere because I don't recognize that other matches ever happening,
Okay.
but yeah, um, I I agree with you. I don't think Charlotte would do it. And I think WWE can probably dangle the John Cena is going to retire at 17 and one day we'll get you to 18 carrot in front of her. I don't know how they get there. She's going to have a hot potato feud at some point. But
But that's where I disagree. She has always said in interviews she hated that they brought her in with the stupid angle that she's going to beat her dad's record.
yeah,
She has never liked that angle. He also just tweeted, "I don't know, I just want to wrestle." Like I said, I could totally be misreading this. Her dad's in AEW. We forget that. Mercedes is in AEW. And remember, when Charlotte re-signed, he asked WWE if she could take a year off and go wrestle in Mexico and go wrestle in Japan and then come back to WWE. And WWE said, no, we won't let you do it. Well, the way for her to do that is actually follow the Mercedes Moné blueprint. You like how I did that?
yeah, oh, that was good.
Because I think Charlotte does have the wrestling bug now, but I don't think she's ever going to get it fulfilled in WWE because, again, a lot of people don't think Charlotte has the guts to do this. Everybody thinks Bailey does, but nobody thinks Charlotte does. And I'm starting to think that Charlotte is more likely to leave WWE than I think people ever realized because I think Charlotte's at a point where she wants to be able to be herself. She doesn't
Yes.
want to be the ice queen on TV anymore. And I don't know if she can ever get around that in WWE. Is WWE going to invest in a Charlotte hits rock bottom character? I don't think so. Like they just don't do that with her. And I think with Bailey, I can't say Bailey has gotten bad creative in WWE. She's at the time got some of the best, but at the time she's also got some of the worst. I just think those two women leaving and going, you talk about market correction. What would correct the market better than those two going to AEW?
No, I totally agree with you. And um, I could be so inspired by seeing Charlotte Flair drop all that pretense and say, yeah, I've actually finally fully fallen in, I'm not saying she hasn't loved wrestling from the beginning, but if you read her book and you read some of her quotes, it's kind of like this path that she wanted to walk because her brother couldn't do it, and that's a tragic way to go about it. And she did find purpose with her four horsewomen, but then she spent a lot of years just clinging to what she felt like was hers, right? And that's not really a fun way to go about your career. Paranoid about who might take her spot and all that. And um I totally forgot that she asked to go wrestle in Japan and Mexico. And these are things that she's just not going to get fulfilled staying under WWE contract. So you might be totally right. I also think as messy as that locker room seems right now with not just what Tiffany did to her, but what, what Nia did at this roast and the things she said about her. That's why she tweeted, I don't know, I just want to wrestle. She
I
probably looks
mean,
over at Mercedes over in AEW that's like, man, I just want to get in the ring with a woman who I trust, who I could be physical with, who's going to be physical back with me, but I also trust that we're trying to make the best thing happen. And not to say she doesn't have any of that in WWE, but I definitely see her as kind of lacking a compass right now.
I,
Uh,
I hate the Charlotte Flair character as a wrestler. I've never liked it.
yeah,
But I really do respect and admire Ashley Flair, the human.
yeah,
I've read her book multiple times. I've read all her interviews, and she's a genuinely nice person.
yes.
She's genuinely a really good person who has, maybe because of her father and the paranoia he's put in her about protecting your spot and stuff, maybe done things that are not in her own character. But another thing that we can talk about with how messy the locker room is Stephanie Vaquer is the face of NXT, but I don't know what her interactions with Charlotte Flair are. But two separate times,
Yeah.
unprovoked, he has, kind of needled Charlotte. And I'm like, where is this coming from? Like when Tiffany did what she did, the fact that Stephanie Vaquer, who is in NXT here, retweeted it and clapped it. I'm like, oh my God, like Stephanie, what if somebody brought up your domestic violence situation, in a promo battle? Like, how would you feel about it?
Well, and it
And
doesn't fit the character either, so it's just
right, like
very odd.
she's supposed to be, like the superhero kind of thing. And then the other thing is, okay, so the devil's kiss move, which, yeah, Charlotte did it first.
Mercedes used to
Madison
do it.
Madison Rain did it long before anybody else in TNA. But it is Stephanie Vaquer's move now. Like it is her move, right? Like let's not pretend like she isn't going to be the most famous women's wrestler. Like she's made it more famous than anybody else. Booker T has a lot to do with that. He sells the move very well, and people love it. But like, the WWE admin goes, I wonder how our NXT chat feels about Charlotte doing this move that she's done, I don't know, 10 years ago. And Stephanie goes, yeah, it doesn't hit the same as me because I have, things about me that just make the move hit better. So she's basically, without body shamming, she's body shamming Charlotte without saying it. And I'm thinking, where is this coming from? Like, what is it about? Like, is Charlotte almost by the newer women in the locker room seen as like, yeah, we're gonna push the old guard out? And I don't know what it is, but I just think Charlotte and Bailey would benefit from going to a new company with fresh creative. And look, Mercedes, I think, saw the future. And I believe that not when she walked out, everybody thinks, oh, when she walked out, she saw this. No, I don't think so. This is what I think happened. And then I'm speculating here. So she gets injured. She wrestles a couple of Japan dates because she wanted to do that. That was a dream. She gets injured in the match with Willow. She goes to All in England and is sitting there with a cast on her leg and says, "Oh my God, there is an alternative. Like there is an alternative. Like there's 80,000 people in Wembley Stadium, and but I can own my own IP. I can get the money I want, but I can wrestle in Japan. I can wrestle in Mexico. I can do all the things I want to do, make the money I want to make, and creatively have a little bit more input. So please do not aggregate this as she's booking herself. She's not. She has input in her character. She's not the booker. Because so what I said is she might have said, okay, let me try this alternative because going back to WWE, yeah, the money's great. They'll push me right away. I'll get the big pop. But what is the future? What is 2 years from this contract? Is it I'm putting over Stephanie? Not, I'm putting over Roxanne. Am I putting over Io? Am I putting over Bianca? Am I putting over Rhea? Because clearly I'm not the future. I'm the present, but my present is to help the future. And I'm not, and I think, look, the one thing about Mercedes Benz, she'll put anybody over. She doesn't care. She's about wrestling, she's about business. But I feel like she realized that creatively, she was going to hit a point in WWE, like they were going to push her. She was going to get huge, and then they would plateau her. And creative, like the stuff she's doing right now with Harley, she's not doing that in WWE. She's not doing any of that stuff. She's not doing the puppet, and she's not doing that. So I think she figured this out. And I think Charlotte Flair, I think Bailey, I'm shocked Natty didn't go. There's some other WWE, like three women I would love to see in AEW if I had my choice. Charlotte Flair, Bailey, Alexa Bliss. Those would be the three.
I have a
Because
different third. Go ahead.
because they are so big as stars that if they go to AEW, not only do they market correct the balance, it's like, oh my God, I can only see Alexa Bliss now in AEW. And for whatever, look, a lot of people have a lot of opinions about Alexa Bliss as a wrestler. You can say whatever you want about her. She's a damn star. And she's as big as any women's wrestler there is in terms of popularity ever. Let's call it what it is. Her, Charlotte, Bailey, and AEW changes the landscape. So who are your three?
So Charlotte and Bailey, I'm going to make a bold prediction, and this is reading the tea leaves, and that's looking at that list. I think that of the young guard, the most likely woman to end up over in AEW at some point and call it the next 3 years is actually Roxanne Perez. And I've got a couple reasons for this. One, she's lived and thrived on the indies before, so she won't be afraid of this free agency thing. Number two, she has that Mercedes level drive of wanting to be the very best in the world, and getting booked 3-12 on TV this year is not something that, if that continues, that she will be creatively satisfied by if that becomes her career. If she has, everyone always says Sasha Banks, they did so much for her. She had all these firsts. Roxanne fans can tell you firsthand. Coming in second in the Elimination Chamber and breaking the Royal Rumble record doesn't feel great when you don't even end up with a Mania match. And the only person ever to do that in the same year before was actually Sasha Banks in 2018. Lasted longer in the Royal Rumble than anyone. Second in the Elimination Chamber. Battle Royal match on Mania doesn't really count, in my opinion, right? Not going to be creatively satisfied by that. So, that being said, is Triple H going to book Roxanne? Shawn Michaels knows how to book Roxanne. Is Triple H going to book Roxanne on par with Rhea, with Bianca, with Stephanie? And if they don't, I see her as being someone that says, I am creatively unfulfilled by this, and I would go wrestle. I will go wrestle somewhere else. She was the ROH champion before, so she's very familiar with kind of, I don't think Tony owned it quite yet when that happened, but that's one I would see, because again, when you have 17 women who are all kind of fighting for this spot, some of them are going to be okay being in seventh place. Oh, there's only these group of women ahead of me. I think Roxanne wants to be the very best, and she's going to seek out where she can prove she's the very best. So,
Roxanne's a good. It's an interesting prediction. So don't you think Roxanne is EO's successor? Like maybe
no, I think
Roxanne will never get the push that, like, she'll never be presented like Rhea and Bianca, but don't you feel like at some point they need to have their ace after EO, and Roxanne can fill, or you're saying you think it's just Stephanie. You just think it's Stephanie takes EO's spot.
you got Stephanie and again, if we're reading the tea leaves that Mariah May comes in, You know what I'm saying? Like at some point you
Yeah,
look at it and you go, with that roster, if Mariah comes in and Stephanie's main roster and Julia's main roster and Rhea's going to need the belt again at some point, deservedly so, by the way.
and
She's the
live
top
and
star,
live.
and Liv and Bianca. That's the market correction I'm talking about. And it won't just be horsewomen. There will be a younger woman or two on the roster, Mariah May's age, that goes, dude, I'm better than this. I want more than this. We're not even talking about like what if someone from NXT explodes on the like Sol Ruka is
Yeah, Sol
great.
Roca's. Yeah,
She
she
could
could.
turn into Jeff Hardy on the main
Yeah,
roster. And
she
at
could.
some point somebody is going to be creatively unfulfilled. Now, something I want to say about Rhea. I will give her the most props in the world if she can create an Undertaker level like version of feuding not around the belt. And I think she's the woman most capable of doing it, creating consistent feuds that don't revolve around the belt. If you think about it, The Undertaker was very, very rarely in the world championship scene. And that's what women's wrestling is missing. I say that there's only so many spots because the track record is you have to have a belt to get on
Yeah.
the PLEs. Frankly, even the United States belt, the tag belt, and the Intercontinental belt are not going to get booked on PLEs very often. But then you have like AJ Styles. They're not going to leave AJ Styles off WrestleMania, right? They weren't going to leave Kevin Owens and Randy Orton off WrestleMania. The men have this
Hmm.
universe to exist in and be creatively fulfilled that the women don't yet have. And I think that that's Rhea's real calling card now. And I hope she sees that. Um,
Yeah, she has the power to do that because
correct.
she's such a big star in the eyes of the people that anybody who feuds with Rhea Ripley is seen as a bigger deal. Like I think I can make the case that Julia, when she did the face off with Rhea, not getting hit by Rhea, not getting touched, and just stepping away, like they made it seem like a big deal. I could say that creatively, that might have been the best thing they've done for Julia since her debut. Because the fact that Rhea Ripley didn't just chuck her over the top and just beat her up, and Rhea
Yep.
almost has to watch her, it's like, oh, this is somebody I got to pay attention to. That was huge. You know what? You have convinced me here. Even though I would love to see what the Alexa Bliss character would look like in AEW, you've convinced me that Roxanne might be the one because she also has another thing. She's very young.
Yep.
She's 23. So let's say she leaves and goes to AEW and she wants to return to WWE at 27. Are they not going to take her back? Of course they're going to take her back. It's 20, she's
Yeah.
27. So she has that advantage where she could even say, "Hey, look, I just want to do this one thing and then I'm coming back to you guys." Um and that could also be possibility like she has age at her side, but you are correct that one of these women is going to go to AEW and it's going to shock the system. But when we really look under the covers, it's not really that much of a shock. It's
It's
actually
a numbers
something.
game.
It is a numbers game, and look, everybody thinks it's so outlandish to see that Charlotte Flair is going to be in AEW. Well, how outlandish was it in 2021 when Sasha Banks main evented WrestleMania with Bianca Belair that she would be really the first big woman to jump? How outlandish is it in 2016 if I told you, hey, there's gonna be this new wrestling promotion that isn't even in existence yet? Dean Ambrose is gonna jump. Dean Ambrose, right? Like this is the Shield.
Yeah, and WWE, yeah.
Yeah.
WWE is not going to get everyone right. They couldn't figure out what to do with Tony Storm. So all I'm saying is at some Tony Storm won the Mae Young Classic, right?
Beat Io.
Beat EO.
Hmm.
She was heralded independent wrestlers they ever brought in, and they couldn't figure out what to do with her on the main roster. And all I'm saying is that at some point there will be some of this younger generation. There will be a PC trained woman and or someone who went independent, fulfilled their WWE dream, like Roxanne, who won't want to settle for being, the even the sixth best on the WWE, sixth most taken care of on the WWE. They want to prove they can be the best. And Roxanne is someone who I think recognizes in her mind she can only prove that she's the best through wrestling great matches, right? That's how she's going to prove she's the best. So That's why she's a candidate for it. It will be interesting when a fully PC grown woman moves over to AEW, because that has not happened yet. Someone who's only gone into wrestling through WWE. Um, the Natty thing, WWE's recognizing that when they re-sign these women, if they just have them on ice, it's going to be bad. And they've let her go to Bloodsport. They're letting her do an NWA show. You've kind of just thrown it out there. Maybe Charlotte will wrestle in Mexico in AAA. Maybe she could wrestle in Marigold, right? If they feel like they've got her static.
Yeah.
It the
That would be
market
great.
correction, the
That would
market
be great.
correction could just be WWE expanding their women's universe, and if that happens, it's also good for women's wrestling.
I also think with Charlotte, and maybe I'm missing this. What I saw out of her in that Tiffany match felt like somebody who just isn't happy. Like I didn't get the sense like when Charlotte and Rhea went out there, I felt like Charlotte wanted to prove like, hey, I'm still one of the damn best women's wrestlers in the world. Against Tiffany, I felt like she was like, I just want to get this thing over with. Like I just didn't get the sense that I mean, maybe they have no chemistry and maybe it's as simple as that. But like I look at what they've done with Naomi creatively and I ask, why can't they flip the coin and do that in the reverse with Charlotte?
Yeah.
Because to me, a heel Naomi with the title at some point facing a babyface Charlotte who has gone to the bottom and trying to climb, and the dynamic of Charlotte saying, "You see, Naomi, all the stuff that trapped me is trapped you. The greed, the da, da, da." It could have been. It could be such a great story, and I know Charlotte still has greatness in her. I just don't know if we're gonna ever get it in this WWE creative, especially look, I mean, say what you will, the locker room, at least the up and come the women, they don't seem to be they're not worshiping at the feet of the four horsewomen.
No.
Like they're not. Like I feel like Io, Rhea, and Bianca now are like the new dream opponents. Like to me, I feel like if you're Stephanie or you're Roxanne or you're Julia or you're Lola Vice or you're Jada Parker or you're Jordan Grace, I want to get with Bianca. I want to get with Io. I want to get with Rhea. Those are the three I want to get with. And if I can't get one of those three, then it's Tiffany. And to me, I think that's the new wave. Like we haven't
Although
even
Stephanie did say Sasha Banks is her dream WrestleMania match.
yeah, she did say that. She did say Sasha. She's a Sasha Banks, yes.
She did.
Well, but the thing is, though, Stephanie knows that her and Mercedes or Sasha Banks have great chemistry, and that would be really, really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think as we wrap here, we got a chance to, talk about the business and talk about the direction it's going in. And I think it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next 3 weeks. We have a backlash pay-per-view, which looks like the women's match is going to be Tiffany, Naya, Jade, Naomi. And is Io even going to be on the card? Because
I
I
think we got a
know,
full reset on that. Yeah, you're right.
because I think Io is going to be saved for the AAA pay-per-view. Um, or the LA pay-per-view, which is Money in the Bank. And then on AEW side, Mercedes Jamie Hayter, which is again another match that a lot of people have wanted to see for years, and we're finally gonna get it at what is it, Double or Nothing?
Double or nothing. Yes, we got about a month to go. I think we'll unpack it next week for everyone. But this Jamie Hayter Mercedes match is kind of interesting because I think AEW fans, like, and I'm talking people who've been following AEW for years, I think they felt like it was Chris's moment. And you could easily see Chris beating Mercedes at Double or Nothing and giving Mercedes her first loss. Even a Mercedes fan would tell you that. The Jamie Hayter thing's interesting because Jamie Hayter just doesn't seem to have the momentum and the juice right now, nor the story to be the first person to beat Mercedes. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Now, you could totally have Athena be the reason Mercedes loses, which is what some people are trying to kind of book right now. But we'll talk about that in the future. It'll be interesting to see how Mercedes is booked the rest of this summer and up to All In. Even the closest followers of her career probably can't lay it out. Would she really wrestle 2 matches at All In? She's not going to be the type of person who wants to. I think she'd wrestle twice, but she also doesn't want to take 2 spots up, right? She's trying to like expand the universe, not bottleneck it, and things like that. So,
I think Mercedes and Tony Storm is by far the biggest women's wrestling match they can. That's the biggest women's match outside of WWE that exists currently, right? Like that is the
yeah,
dream match that isn't capable in WWE. The thing about Mercedes that is the genius of her is she's able to make everybody look good, whether she wins the match or she loses the match, right? You look at she beats Kanji, but Kanji's never been a hotter name. She beat Stephanie Vaquer so badly that Stephanie Vaquer became the face of NXT. Like, she
right.
did such she buried her so because I hate when people say stupid things like, and it is stupid. I hate to use that word, but it is. Oh, Mercedes is does buries. What do you get out of losing to Mercedes? Ask Stephanie Vaquer. Like, if there's a like if somebody ever makes fun of Mercedes for that, she's gonna be like, call Stephanie because Stephanie Vaquer lost to Mercedes and proceeded to be the face of a brand that consistently beats AEW in the ratings now. And Stephanie is the draw of that promotion because when she doesn't wrestle, they get about 50 to 75,000 less viewers. So she clear cut is the face of NXT. It's not any of the men, it's her. And she got that from one match because nobody in WWE watched the first Stephanie Mercedes match, but the second one they surely watched it and they gave her that deal. So I still think, as we can end on this, I still think the first women who should beat Mercedes in AEW should be Harley Cameron. I still think that the story has to be that Mercedes wins the title from Tony, takes Harley under her wing, her protege, and they build a year-long Batista Triple H type of angle where Harley just finally turns on her, the crowd loses its mind, and nobody gives Harley a chance, and she beats her. And that has to be the story.
That she has both belts for the whole year.
Roman Reigns had every belt for 3 years. It's the hottest the WWE has ever been. I mean, look, you're a very big sports fan, and I know we're gonna wrap here because you got to go watch your team. And good luck to your Pistons today. I don't like the Knicks,
Thank you.
so I hope the Pistons win. You know this about sports. Dynasty type teams make people watch sports.
Yep.
Why did
Dominance
people
sells.
dominance? Why did people love to see the Chiefs lose the Super Bowl? Because they were dominant. Why did people love to see that Warriors team lose to the Raptors or the Bulls team break up or the Miami Heat team lose or well, I don't know, Alabama football lose or Duke basketball. Like people want to cheer Darth Vader to see Darth Vader lose. I think Mercedes being the hottest thing she could be, getting every belt and losing to Harley Cameron, who I think, if I were to put money on who's going to be the next big women's wrestling star in all of wrestling, I would give her as good a shot as anybody to be the biggest star because she has every tool you could want. She's charismatic. She looks great. She has this charisma to her that many people don't have. She's multi talented. You can't teach that. And I just think
Mm.
that's the perfect story for me. So that's kind of how we're gonna wrap. You have any final thoughts? I know you got to get to your see your Pistons play.
No, my final thoughts are go Pistons. Hopefully, we can even up the series today. And no, it's we'll the slower season. We've got a couple weeks to go to Backlash. Unlike most backlashes, it looks like we're not getting just a rematch fest, though we get a very necessary Jade Naomi rematch. Double or Nothing is still a month away, so um, and we're coming up on a year, I think, doing this,
Hmm.
so it's good to kind of recap where the business is at. But I'm actually, what I'll end on for me is, um, no matter what happens with Mariah May, I think she is doing a gigantic service to women's wrestling going about this the way that she is or seems to be doing. We don't know for a fact, but uh, hitting this thing into true free agency is the best thing that she could do for herself and for the future of women's pay in this sport. So I hope she follows through on it, and wherever she lands is where she's supposed to land, especially if she gets that counter offer
Yeah.
and ups the dollars. So
Last thing before we wrap, to the NBA refs, please just call the game properly.
please,
Please
I'm begging.
don't let SGA East, which is Jalen Brunson, ruin the game. The Pistons play a physical style of basketball, which a lot of old school fans like myself are happy that it's back. Please just call the game fair and give give Billy's boy here, Cade, some respect. He's going to be all NBA third team. Let him get some calls too. I just beg that these refs don't turn into professional wrestling refs every time the Knicks play because they want to move the Knicks to the next round because of the market.
Yeah, it's not even just the flopping on the Brunson side. Cade doesn't have a flopping bone in his body, so if they're going to send Brunson to the free throw line 12 times, um, Cade should be there 12, if not 16 times, because just because he's not going to flop, he takes way more contact, and I'll leave it at
Look,
that.
look, look. Every all these NBA refs, all these guys talk about how these new generation of players don't have Mamba mentality. Kobe would never flop. Well, I know Cade, his hero. He looks up to LeBron, but Cade plays the game a lot like Kobe in the sense of like he doesn't beg for calls. Like he's not like he gets fouled, he doesn't run to the ref. Hey, I got hit. Like Kobe's like, okay, you hit me in my face. I'm gonna go shoot the free throws. I move on. And I feel like those type of players should get rewarded because it's like they're not foul baiting. And
Yep,
I just
better
wonder, like
product.
everybody always talks about the Mamba mentality, yet the guys who play with the Mamba mentality don't benefit from it in the actual league, which is weird, right? Because they put Kobe on like this pedestal, great, and he's my guy. But then the guys who emulate him on the court, they don't get anything for it. So you're better emulating James Harden or
Ginobili,
SGA, Ginobili, right? It is so please, refs, call a good game. Good luck to your Pistons. We'll see you guys next week.
thanks everyone.
Yep.